Ominous clouds hovered on the horizon, darkening the pale autumn skies. They did nothing to soothe Sihara's brittle nerves. Her fathko would have chastised her and said it was unbecoming of a Taja to be nervous. Her fathko held the life of his people in his hands. One wrong word, one missed phrase, and their people and their way of life would end. Her usual walk to the meeting hall took twice as long. Her guardian had the sense to give her an extra wide berth. What would become of the meeting hall if the Animalians conquered the world? The hall had stood for 3,000 years. Its dark polished clay exterior seemed humble when compared to its importance in the lives of the people of the Minerale Light Kingdom and the Elementi Republics. Sarah prayed to the blue crystals in the alcove next to the door. Creator of all, I ask that you grant my father the calm, unwavering strength of the earth. May your followers feel their light in your heart. The crystal shone with a light within as the Creator heard her prayer. Nodding to the guards as she stepped through the doorway, Sihara entered the meeting hall. The ancient Elementi tapestry hanging behind the stage, showed an idyllic, hopeful, naive world, where all the beings of the planet stood side by side, hand in hand. Sarah remembered the hours she had spent studying it as a child, looking for hidden figures woven into its fading colors. The building seemed bigger on the inside. How else would it fit hundreds and hundreds of chairs? At first you might assume it was a theater with all the chairs facing the stage where her fathko and the Lord Ambassador sat. However, if you walked closer, you could see an arena where a podium stood at the center. The acoustics were engineered so someone could speak at normal volume at the podium or on the stage, and everyone in the audience could hear them. Sarah chose a good seat behind the barrier which separated the public viewing seats from the noble and highborn seats. One seat for each of the Elementi highborn and noble Mineralites. The elaborate throne was a rather new addition, and to think that the Elementi were extravagant, the Mineralite were much more so. Her fathko sat at the mediator's table on the stage beside the Lord Ambassador Kern. They spoke behind a sheet of paper, reducing their words to inaudible whispers. She didn't have to hear them to know they were arguing about some minute detail like they always did. Her majka gave her hand a squeeze and took a seat beside her. Smile, dear. We must put on our best face for the whole room. Jaden led his majka Vivian and his seskas Claudia and Roxanne to sit beside them. His youngest seska, Eliza, was too young to attend the mediation. Jaden leaned over and whispered, You're in my seat. Sarah feigned surprised. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see reserved for Lord Jaden's. Jaden smirked. Well, you know that seat has the best view, and no drafts from the window. Well, if you had such a preference, maybe you should have come earlier. Sarah raised a sarcastic eyebrow. They had played this game since they were old enough to watch her fathko's daily meditations over various disputes between the countries. Jaden smiled at the image of disdain he was trying to give. Sarah smiled. In all seriousness, shouldn't you be on the other side of the barrier? Giving Claudia and Roxanne a look, she added, All of you? Our father thought it would make people feel we biased the final vote, Claudia replied, trying to sound nonchalant, but Sihara could tell it bothered her. Sarah didn't push the topic. No doubt the lords had pushed for their removal because they were Senkin. Another reminder of their shared outcast status. She had been born without elemental abilities, and they had been born without genetic alteration. They built a friendship on their foundation of understanding how it felt for others to treat them differently just because of the way they were born. The building began to fill. A symphony arose from the shuffle of shoes on worn wood flooring, the creak of old chairs, and the discontented murmurs. Fathko's job would not be easy. One could already see the division among the people, even if they had spent the last night celebrating peace. They were not ready to embrace the concepts behind it. On one side of the room sat the Mineralite nobles, women included. On the other side, the Elementi highborn. Lord Ambassador Kern stood. Welcome, and thank you for attending this special meeting to mediate the additions to the alliance agreement. This document will ensure the safety of both people and will allow us to defeat the Animalians once and for all. The first order of business is agreeing to the ground rules. I knew it. You will tell us how we have to behave, and therefore ensure we are forced to work together. Count Bajorn stood if he was about to leave. He had not attended many mediations. On the contrary, Count Bajorn, we are only here to keep the conversation on track. We will not be interfering with your decisions. Our ground rules will help to streamline the process and ensure no violence breaks out between our people. Tarek smiled at the man. Now, please sit down. I would hate for you to leave and not be able to contribute to the discussion. Camdar Bajorn sat down with a petulant frown. Sarah whispered to Jaden. No doubt he's disappointed because no one rose to follow him. Jaden's face pinched in an effort not to laugh. Lord Ambassador Kern continued. First, we will defer off-topic conversations to a later time, when we can form a committee to deal with the idea or issue. This will help speed up the process so we can get back to winning the war. Sorry. Clever jab, that. Get back to winning the war, Jaden whispered. I added that line, Roxanne preened. Tarek adjusted his glasses so he could read from his notes. The second ground rule is that no one can interrupt another person. If you want to reply, you may raise your hand, and we will keep track of the order of people that want to reply. You may interrupt with something urgent. You can raise your hand and shake your hand so that we can politely interrupt. Jaden's hair whispered to each other at the same time. Politely. Majka squeezed her hand. Quiet, dear. Somehow that made it harder to stop laughing. Sarah bit her lip, and Jaden coughed behind his handkerchief. What's so funny? Claudia asked. Jaden shook his head at his own Majka's sharp glare. Tarek continued. The third ground rule is no one may insult someone because they dislike what they said or because they disagree with what someone thinks. Lord Ambassador Kern glared at specific nobles. Are we ready to begin? After a few moments of discussion, the highborns and nobles agreed to the ground rules. Ah, man, if only it were that easy to get them to agree to the alliance, Jaden grumbled. I have each of your names in this bag. I will pull out one of your names, and you will present any issues you wish to discuss before signing the alliance. Her fathko ruffled around in the bag and took a slip of paper. Sihara Castile, please rise and make your way to the podium. Sihara Castile's tanned complexion and green eyes marked him as a man of the fallen Tanzino Republic. If we want a fair chance at winning the war, Minerale must take care of half the Tajainfo Elementi refugees. Lord Neron raised his hand, and Kern nodded. Neron stood. Why should we help weaklings? The only reason the Animalians could attack Minerale because the Tajainfo Republic fell before their blades like a pack of simpering fools. There was a collective gasp from the Elementi and a few Mineralites. Liar, Claudia hissed. I have Tajainfo friends, and I know the Animalians paid for blood for every inch in there that they gained. Sarah understood why Kern agreed to put his children on the sidelines in the first mediation now. He had hoped he knew what he was doing. Sihara Castile countered. You know that is not true. You would not be here right now talking with us about the alliance if that were true. You would have defeated the Animalians that attacked your borders after the fall of the Tajainfo Republic. Kern followed. If you can come up with a logical reason why it would not be fair for the Minerale to take on a percentage of the refugees, we will be more than willing to consider it. Lord Neron sneered, crossed his arms, and sat down. Roxanne whispered, I heard Lady Susan is the rightful heir of the Harkin house. Lady Emra said she'd get the Harkin household straightened out soon, Sarah replied. Jaden leaned back. So, Lord Neron might not be so problematic after all. Sihara Castile continued. I believe once we have spread our resources between our countries, we'll have a better chance at beating back the Animalians. We have already lost the largest agricultural republic to the Animalians. We do not have the resources to feed all our soldiers and the southern Elementi. If we were to disperse the weight over our countries, the strain would not break either of us. Grand Admiral Gunter raised his hand, and Kern nodded. The Admiral began. I agree with Sihara Castile. It makes sense from a strategic point of view, and I commend his thoughtfulness in this matter. I suggest the countries agree to share the burden of any displaced Mineralites and Elementi, not just those of the Tajainfo Republic. Sihara Castile smiled. A wise suggestion. This received a few more discreet votes from either side. Tarek looked up over the edge of his glasses. Does anyone else have something to say about this matter? Lady Emra raised a hand and stood up. Are any of the refugees of fighting age? Sihara Castile nodded. But all of the men who know how to fight are already on the battlefields. There's only a handful of untrained boys among the refugees. Then perhaps something Minerale can provide along with housing and feeding the refugees is training on how to use the weaponry which we are famous for creating. Lady Emma put a fist over her heart. I pledge House Wern's resources towards helping the refugees of fighting age. This changed things. The noble Mineralites spoke amongst themselves. They were not taking on a burden. This was gaining access to a new resource of soldiers. Do you think Lady Emma intends to train the women as well? Sihara asked. Jaden made a noise of amusement. Oh, that would be just like her, turning the women into warriors. Her falcons are proof enough that women can be as deadly as any man, Claudia said. Roxanne sushed her siblings as King Dresden stood. Representatives from all the major houses raised their fists. King Dresden nodded. Minerale agrees to accept the responsibility for all untrained and any displaced Elementi men and women of fighting age. If this does not equal half or more, Minerale will accept their extended families. We must form a committee to decide on the number of refugees and how many refugees each noble house will receive. Murmurs of discontent came from the Elementi highborn. Castile bowed his head and smiled as he took his seat. Tarek drew another name from the bag. Lord Albrecht. Albrecht fidgeted as he made his way to the podium. I would only sign this alliance agreement if all parties agreed to act as a unified army. Rather than two separate entities. Hands raised with urgency. Let him finish. Kern already sounded tired. As to the matter of who would keep their positions in the army, I think that is irrelevant, and committee can decide, of course. We will try to act, if we try to act, as allies only, not as co-conspirators, then this alliance won't do us any good. I know there are men who would want to continue their plots of revenge, unless we forbid it. That would not go over so well. Sarah restrained herself from shaking her head. She didn't want to show if she agreed or disagreed with anyone. It could reflect poorly on her fathko. Of course you would think that. Camdar Henry, one of the Elementi highborn, grumbled loud enough for everyone to hear. Tarek glanced at him. Do you have something positive to add? Camdar Henry's face drew in a taunt line. No, I don't. This man is a murderer, and someone should bring him to justice. I cannot allow him to be sitting here speaking of peace. Lord Albrecht opened his mouth to reply. Another voice from the Mineralite side piped up. Camdar Henry? Oh dear. Camdar Henry shrunk in his seat, and all the fight went out of him. How dare you ask for justice when you had my brother assassinated? Count Joseph's face reddened with anger. The plot thickens. Jaden sat forward, no doubt enjoying the drama. Camdar Henry rinsed as he replied, well, it wasn't my fault the assassin mistook your brother for Lord Albrecht. I mean, the two of them have such a striking resemblance. Or rather, had a striking resemblance. Everyone winced at his unfortunate choice of words. Count Joseph lunged forward. A few men rose to stop him and held him down. I think we could use a timeout, Tarek shouted over the growing din. The guards were pushing their way through the crowd. Camdar Henry was out of his seat in an instant, trying to push his way out of the room. Count Joseph spat and clawed, fighting like a beast to avenge the death of his slain brother. Sarah felt someone tap her shoulder and saw Mikkel sitting beside her. Time to go. Just before Mikkel rushed her out of the meeting hall, she saw Lord Ambassador Kern step off the stage. He joined the brawl to subdue the lord consumed by his rage. Sarah rushed to the small anteroom of the hall with her Majka and Guardian following close behind. Is my fathko all right? Tarek sat in a leather armchair with his hands covering his face. It was going so well. They were just starting to agree on things. Her Majka heaved a sigh of relief and rubbed her shoulders with a smile. Oh, he's fine. He wasn't the one who leapt into the brawling crowd. Dr. Quinto made a noise of disapproval as he treated the Lord Ambassador's bruises. The enforcers had everything under control. You needn't have risked your life. Kern replied with a grunt and held a small bundle of ice to his forehead. Perhaps we should have started the talks yesterday. Jaden's voice piped up from the doorway. On the contrary, I think a night of celebration softened them up. That could have been a lot nastier. Lord Ambassador Kern Walter Calistine. Lady Vivian burst into the room, followed by her daughters. Wow, she knew how to make an entrance. Kern waved off the doctor and hid the ice pack behind his back. Yes. Vivian crossed her arms and glared at him. You are a noble. You are a father. You are not a guard. I expect you to leave the crowd control to the trained professionals and not go risking your life for absolutely no reason at all. Just a few bruises. Kern smiled apologetically. I'll keep that in mind next time. Vivian glared at him for a second more before wrapping him in his arms. Oh, thank goodness you're all right. Sarah looked from the open embrace of Vivian and Kern to Ramajka's hand on her fathko's shoulder. It was not their way to be so affectionate of others, but there was a certain charm to it. Jaden cleared his throat. So, when are we going to start the next session? After lunch. It's harder to be disagreeable after a satisfying meal, and should give them a few hours to cool off, Tarek sighed. Sarah bit her lip as she considered the best way to add her thoughts. Fathko, do you remember the case you mediated between Jennings and Harkin? Tarek grunted. Yes, I do. The Lord and the Sihara kept fighting over the most ridiculous details, just for the fun of it. You know, I had 10 cases held up because the two of them were taking up all my time. The only way to make them stop fighting and resolve the issue was to show them how their actions were affecting people in the real world. I've been in dozens of people living on their lands who had lost family, animals, and their livelihood because of that border dispute. Perhaps we can do the same thing with the war? Sarah prompted. Tarek settled deep in thought. That might work. Sarah lingered in the anteroom long after everyone else had left. She listened to her fathko engaged in lengthy strategic debate with the Lord Ambassador until she realized her presence must make them feel uncomfortable. What should she do with this unexpected free time? Slim hands grasped her from behind and pulled her into a plant-filled alcove. She clicked and clawed, trying to twist her way out of the grip of the stranger. They deftly countered each strike. Whoever they were, someone had trained them in Kelto, the Highborn's own non-violent form of fighting. A well-paid assassin? Be still, a familiar voice commanded with enough force to make her pause. A group of Mineralites ran past their hiding space, and her mysterious assailant breathed a sigh of relief. Stop squirming and listen to me. The Mineralite King's life is in danger. Sarah placed the woman's voice. Victoria, what have you gotten yourself into? Victoria swore and released Sihara from her grip. She wore a simple servant's garb, except for the scarf that was covering her face. I never wanted you to find out like this, but we have little time. I'm being pursued by members of the Mineralite supportive movement. They caught me eavesdropping on their meeting. Did they see your face? Sarah grasped her shoulders. Victoria shook her head. Don't worry about me. I need you to go to the King's Guard and tell them Lord Neron is working with the Mineralite superiority movement to assassinate the king. Sarah's blood ran cold. Creator of mercy. When? I don't know when or how they plan to do it. Promise me you're going to tell the King's Guard. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the corridor, prompting Sihara to feel along the length of the alcove till she found a shallow indentation. I promise. Now you have to get out of here, Victoria. Pressing down, the wall gave way to a hidden servant's passageway. This will lead you to the laundry room. Victoria whispered a thanks and disappeared, the secret doorway closing behind her. Once Sihara was sure she would not run into some of the dangerous Mineralites, she stepped out of the alcove. Mikkel? Her guardian spun around, putting a hand over his heart. There you are. Where did you sneak off to? No matter. You must take me to see the King's Guard. Mikkel tilted his head in a silent question, but when Sihara provided no further details, he led the way to the Mineralite wing. The chilly air only added to the dread building in Sihara's stomach. A king's aide had set up a makeshift desk in the hallway. Sarah pressed her hands together and offered a curt bow. I must speak with one of the King's Guard. It is urgent. Before the aide could reply, one of the guards stepped forward. His appearance was typical of the average Mineralite upper class with black hair, pale skin, and blue eyes. It's all right. I'll take care of this, Charles. But the guard silenced his retort with a glare. Fine, just waste your time with every complaint that comes through here. See if I care. The guard rolled his eyes. What can I help you with, Taja? The words spilled out. Lord Neron's working with the Mineralite superiority movement to assassinate the king. I see. The guard winced. This is a heavy charge you are bringing against him. Do you have proof of his involvement? Sarah's palms became sweaty. A trusted friend overheard Lord Neron talking to people they recognized as members of the Mineralite supporting movement. And what is the name of your friend? The guard straightened. I cannot tell you. It should just be enough that I trust them. They would not lie about something like this. Unfortunately, that is not enough. We cannot do anything about this report unless we speak with the person who told you directly. Her heart sank. You don't believe me. The guard shook his head. Whether I believe you is besides the point. If you cannot confirm the trustworthiness of your friends, then I cannot act upon your accusation. I want to reassure you, though, the King's Guard are prepared for the possibility of an assassination, and we have taken measured steps to prevent it from succeeding. The guard took few steps to close the gap between him. Now, if I may give you some advice, you should not go around accusing your fathko's political rivals of treason and attempted assassination unless you are prepared to turn over the witness or a written document attesting to the fact. In a rush to help Victoria, she had not even thought about how her actions might affect her fathko. A weight pressed upon her chest, and her face grew warm. I didn't make this up. I'm telling you the truth. The guard shrugged. Without proof, someone may come to their own conclusions about your actions. Sarah stormed out of the room, her hands tingling with suppressed fury. Striking a member of the King's Guard would not help her case. I hope you guys enjoyed Chapter 10. This was one of really fun chapters to write. We're really getting into the more of the intrigue side of things on Sihara's perspective. So are you wondering what Jaden is up to with all this free time? Well, let's find out next week in Chapter 11, Spies in Every Corner. Join Lord Jaden for a secret meeting with members of the Scarlet Society. Secret meetings, an unexpected visitor, spies, and lies. I hope you guys enjoyed this chapter, and if you guys want to read more, I'm going to go ahead and drop a link where you can actually read chapter 11 today. If you guys want to join me for next week, I will be live again at 3 o'clock PDT every Sunday reading a new chapter of Shadows of the Ambassadorial Halls. Thank you guys so much